Morning YouTubers, this is Mopar Man 1978 doing a part 2 of possibly a part 4 series of my videos concerning my leaf springs that I've restored / modified. Last time I did a video which was part 1. I had all the leaf springs apart. I'd already sandblasted them, and I was fabricating the parts to start to put them back together, or parts that I had bought online to put it back together, whatnot. Got my polyurethane bushings already in and greased. Went to Fastenal and bought all my rust-proof grade 8 nuts, bolts, and lock washers, or lock nuts, I should say, not lock washers, lock nuts. Any spots in here that's got those plastic friction pads, I put the new friction pads in there, and whatever spot that it rubs up against, I put a thin coat of anti-seize. And here in the middle of the leaf springs, they came from the factory with, I don't know, about 2.5 to 3 inch wide galvanized strips for cushioning, anti-friction cushioning strips. I did that, plus each side got a thin coat of anti-seize. I got this set of center bolts from off the internet, and then I went to AutoZone, got these heavy-duty leaf spring clamps instead of the little thin wimpy sheet metal clamps for to hold the leaf springs together. Anyway, the other thing I wanted to do is, because even though I like the jacked up look in the rear on the muscle cars and stuff in the trucks, mine, if I put those new leaf springs compared to the old crappy leaf springs in there, which were meant for light duty use, since this used to be a slant 6 truck, and it already sits up high now because I have coil over rear shocks. It's going to set really high. So what I did is I went online and bought these adjustable lowering shackles. I'm not going to turn the truck into a lowrider or make it look like it's going to be a motorboat where the front end sits up real high and the ass end sinks real low. These are going to drop it down. You can drop it down 1 or 2 inches. I'm going to drop it 2 inches to give it that leveled look. Sides are heavy duty. They're already powder coated. They already got the polyurethane bushings in here with the grease certs that come with them. You got to install the grease certs on them. And then if you look real close, I don't know if you can see them in the video, there's square little holes on the end of these grease certs right around that tube. Those little square holes go all the full length of the bushings. So when you fill these up with high temp silicone grease, it'll make sure everything gets greased in there and it won't wear out them bushings, or make them squeak. More like make them squeak instead of wearing them out, because they take forever. I had polyurethane bushings on the dart. But anyway, the other part of this video, if you got any 70s or 80s Dodge trucks and you happen to have a manual crank regulator in the door and it decides to take a shit on you, I went online to LMC, ordered one, basically Dorman and all them other ones. They all sell the same damn part. It's just under a different seller. Anyway, I matched up the part numbers. Anyway, thought I could just grind out the factory rivets on the door and install this and put short little nuts and lock nuts on it. Everything would be all hunky-dory. Well, I got it in there, but then I noticed the window would fall back down in the door. Well, I took the whole new part out, took it, matched it up. See, right here is where the pivot shaft is for the big heavy-duty coil spring that goes in here. Anyway, I matched up the pivot shaft on the new one where the coil spring is. Flat coil spring, it's not a, like the one on the front of a truck. But anyway, mashed it up here, compared it to the factory one was at least 1.5 inches longer. So what I did was I cut the factory one off, mounted it to the front of the new regulator, ground it, welded it both sides, make sure it wouldn't bend or bust. Did that. Come over here and measure these compared to the new ones, the ones that actually pivot. I had to take 3/8 of an inch off over here on the new one and bring it down to line up with this one here. And this one here was either 1 3/8 or 1.5 inches shorter compared to the one on the new regulator, so I had to cut, well, no, actually it was 2 3/8 or something like that longer. So I had to cut off the new section on the new one, shorten it down to where this pivot stud lined up with the factory pivot stud. And once I did all that, got the regulator back in the door. And before I did that one, the little thing before I forget, I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. This actually goes in like this and over the top of there. The other problem with the new part is it comes from the Dorman or wherever like this. Well, the problem is the factory one actually has a rectangular lip on each side that comes out about 7/16 to 1/2 inch wide. I think it's more like 1/2 inch wide on each side. So what I had to do is I had to thoroughly measure as far as the width, and then compare it to the new one and set it, spot weld it on each end, take it, put it in the door, line it up to make sure all lined up. I had to do it a couple of different times to get it just right. And then slowly do your spot welds on both sides so you don't overheat anything, making sure the lip stays straight and doesn't start curving in or out because of the heat when you're welding. Anyway, did all that. Once I got it all welded up, I started welding the spots up here, basically filling it in on both sides, not just one side, make sure it was strong. And then I even came in and welded the edges up to one another just to give it that extra strength. Well, the other thing too is they put cheap ass rollers that goes on these little studs in the window tracks. Luckily for me, the heavy duty nylon ones from the factory were still good. So all I did is I did a combination of white lithium grease. I made a mixture of white lithium grease and dielectric grease, and I put a little bit of grease on the old wheels, inside the old wheel. Then what I had to do is I had to come in with a channel lock and slide the wheel in the track, and as I rolled the window up, line this up with the hole in the middle of the nylon wheel, and then come in with the channel locks from behind this tab and on the front of the wheel, and grip the handle until you hear it go pop and it's back in place. And then all the tracks in the door, especially for the window itself, all got greased just to make sure nothing's binding. And now that's all been fixed. So when you go and buy that new part, unless you go find a good old used factory one and make sure the teeth, that was the other thing. I'll flip this over. From here down to about here, where the window does most of the rolling, the teeth are all wore off one side. They're almost a chisel point now instead of being a rounded point. So all the teeth got wore off. The sprocket that comes in here, it's probably about 3/8 of an inch wide. Right in the middle of it, right in the middle of the tooth head, perfectly round groove wore into it. So it would catch on some of this, and then as soon as it would hit some of this, it would just, the door handle would just spin. Anyway, so that's what you're going to have to deal with. You're going to have to find a good used set out of an old junk truck that didn't get used much, or you're going to have to run into the same thing. The other thing you can possibly do, it's going to be a pain in the ass, is you're going to have to come to the factory bracket. And I don't know if you can see it, it's got these little metal pop rivets, crush rivets, whatever you want to, I think they're more like crush rivets. You have to grind all them out, take this little plate out, and there's a circular spring mechanism and a little, this is where the little gear sits. And you're going to have to come in, you're going to have to weld up each one of these little teeths, find them, grind them, get them back to where they look like factory, and then you're going to have to do the same thing to that inner sprocket. And then spot weld it close. This little plate that goes on here, you're going to have to spot weld the little plate back on it, or you're going to have to use little pop rivets, put all that back together just to get this thing to be workable again. So that's your options for especially the 80s Dodge trucks. Most of them were clones for electric windows. I didn't have electric windows, I had the crank windows. On the websites and at AutoZone and stuff, they'll say that this only fits mid to late 70s Dodge pickup trucks, but on other websites it says fits 70s all the way up to 90 Dodge truck with crank windows. Anyway, that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. So there might be, depending on the weather, when I get ready to do the leaf spring swap, I'm going to start on this side or the other side. If we have one good day, I might have to make this, instead of a 3-part video on the leaf spring swap, to 4 or 5 depending on the weather, because I don't have a shop and I can't go in and use anybody else's shop. All my buddies have shops, but they all got, or garages, and they've all got their projects and stuff in there, so kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, and I don't have the money for quite some time to afford a garage. I'm just getting to where I can just afford a 10 by 12 portable building. But anyway, let's see here. One of the other things is, people have never actually seen me in any of my videos. I had one person ask me if I was camera shy. I was like, well, no. Like I said before, I went ahead, and since I don't have a lot of money, I'm not going to go out and buy a brand new GoPro. So I went out and bought a cheap $18 conceited stick from Walmart. Everybody calls them selfie sticks. I'm not one of these trendy assholes that got to take a picture of themselves every 2 minutes, or what they've eaten, and put it on Instagram or whatever. But anyway, now I got a handle so I can do a rotation with this instead of trying to hold the camera and work on something at the same time. And I'll make a little poor man's tripod or something to set this in while I work on the projects, so you guys can actually see me working on my vehicles. But here's a video of my ugly mug. So you guys know what I look like now. But anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and I know some of you that watch the channel probably get a kick out of this. Maybe I might lose some subscribers over this. I don't know, don't care. I'm like Jed from Scott's Speed Shop. You know, when it comes to politics, I try not to talk about it on my videos, but I'm going to leave you with this. That's all, folks.